I actually do believe that I'm live streaming. And what is today? Today is the 25th, and I believe it's Tuesday. And so it's been a couple days. I had quite a brain dump the other day with OPENTOONZ. And hence I posted a number of OPENTOONZ quick tips. And I'm really a little worried that I'm going to probably lose subscribers, because I think a lot of you guys out there that are subscribed to me are probably really enthused about Blender. And could be wrong. I could be wrong about this, but I think that there's probably a few of you that really would like to see the use and embracing of the Blender grease pencil for the sake of doing 2D animation, which obviously is what it's for, and it's pretty cool. And you know, with this animation, all of the pencil tests and all of the ink lines were done in Blender, and then what we're seeing here, which I guess I probably should do what I usually do, is recap it as we go through here. This is obviously not in preview mode, but actually let me do it this way. Can I hit? Yeah, down arrows. Okay. Switches. So I've probably made some progress since my last live stream, because there's a lot more color. This one's definitely interesting. We should probably look closer. But so the bad news for the Blender fanboys, of which I am one, of course. Been using Blender since 1999, for crying out loud. 20 years almost. But the deeper I go, to my great shock and surprise, the deeper I go with OPENTOONZ, the more it feels like a program that was written by animators for animators. It feels like the people that wrote this really understood how you would want to work. The main thing being the way that your work propagates upstream and downstream. What I mean by that is, like, I'll give you an example here. The last shot that I worked on would have been this one. Okay, actually, this just the fact that these columns are purple-ish kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. When you have a complicated project, okay, and I'm going to open an X-sheet window here so you can see, because this project that was initially exported out of Blender had 1,000 frames, okay, and then what I did was I broke those frames into shots. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily the best way to work. As you can see, as we go down, each of the shots is broken into its own level or column. The thing is that we really didn't have, as we got into post-production and adding various, you know, whatever, effects, backgrounds, yada yada yada, all of a sudden one column, well, actually, if each column is a shot, let's say about 10 or 12 columns, quickly turns into, you know, 100. That's a lot to manage. So from a commonsensical standpoint, you think to yourself, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow take all the columns that are sort of associated together and group them? Well, guess what? That's exactly what sub-X sheets are for. So the whole idea of being able to go down into this new X sheet that only shows me these levels that are relevant to this shot is very, very useful. I mean, for me, it's just oops, I gotta climb back up out of here. For me, it's it really makes the workflow much cleaner, and you can see it in the schematic view, because I use the schematic view a lot. Like, there are at least 3 or 4 different ways in OPENTOONZ with various tools to take okay, before I show you the schematic, maybe I should say this. Let's just say, let's say you had a column that had someone's head and another column that had their torso, and somehow you want to lock these together so that when the torso rotates, you know, the head goes with it. I mean, that's a pretty obvious thing to want to be able to do. Well, you can do that in OPENTOONZ with by grouping levels and turning them into a sub-X sheet and creating a hierarchy that way. You can do it with the hook tool. You can do it with the bones tool. You can do it with the plastic tool. Or you can do it with the schematic. So there's multiple ways to crack that nut. For me, and I'm probably in the minority, I'm going to guess here, but for me what's most intuitive is the schematic view. When I look at the schematic view, the idea of a hierarchy, it all makes perfect sense to me. And it comes up a lot. Now what I was going to say with the schematic view is you've got all these nodes that correspond to these levels. If I go down into the sub-X sheet, all of a sudden I have a much simpler, cleaner schematic because only the levels associated with this sub-X sheet are shown. So that's very useful because it just keeps, you're not searching constantly for stuff, right? Okay, so OPENTOONZ sort of gives you multiple ways to accomplish the same thing. I see here, by the way, that there's 2 people watching. If you guys would do me a big favor and let me know who you are and let me know what you're interested in, because I was saying at the beginning of this live stream that I suspect I'm going to lose some subscribers. Somebody just thumbs up me. I don't know what that was for, but I appreciate it. But no, I wonder if I'll lose subscribers because I'm not talking about Blender. I think a lot of people that subscribe to this were really hoping that this whole project would sort of consummate in the use of the Blender grease pencil in various ways and basically everything Blender. And believe me, I wish that could be the case. I worked very hard to try to make that be the case, and what I found was it doesn't quite work that way. And I used to be fairly disparaging in my comments about OPENTOONZ, but the thing about it is that if you guys can relate, in the animation world, especially on YouTube, it's all about little tests. I've done tons of it myself. You know, it's all about little tests to see if this will work or that will work, and then we demonstrate the things that we've learned, that we know, that we're excited about, that we want to share. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great thing. But once you get into a sizable project like this, and this is not even sizable compared to, I mean, I've edited and directed multiple entire feature films, and that gets really complicated, especially if there's a lot of special effects involved. So my 4th film, called Out of Time, had a whole bunch of like green screen environments and stuff, and it was all done in Blender, by the way, and this was back in like 2008 or something. So I'm definitely a Blender guy, but for anime, what I'm finding is the deeper I go, the more I have to do, the more sizable the project becomes, the more complicated. Well, bad news. The more I find that OPENTOONZ is proving to be up to the task as a professional tool. Other than, believe it or not, I'm really going to say this, other than the fact that it just crashes and blows up fairly frequently. But if you've been doing any animation type work with software, you know, for any number of years, you know that having software that blows up is kind of par for the course. Okay, so anyway, what I was getting at is what I was getting at is several things at once, but what I wanted to say is I've got 2 people watching the live stream right now. If you guys would do me a favor and just post something in the chat if you can, so I know like who you are. And I'm actually very curious, I'm hoping this'll pick up a bit, is why are you here? What are you interested in? What is it you're wanting to see or hear or learn while you're here? Because I'm very curious about that, like why people would be interested in anything I have to say. You know, so anyway, let me go back up out of this sub-X sheet and kind of show you the latest on the scene, because if in fact you've watched in the past. I'm going to be boring you by just recapping stuff that I've already done. The most interesting thing going on right now is this column. Okay, so we've sort of advanced from these two guys climbing up the wall to this shot. And this shot is actually quite interesting because of all that it reveals about working in OPENTOONZ. So I'm going to go control down arrow, which for me takes me quote unquote down into that sub-X sheet, so I can see the individual levels or layers that comprise this sub-X sheet. So again, I know I keep saying it, but I just saw another person is watching the live stream right now. Tell me who you are, why you're here, what you're interested in, because I am curious about that. So now we go down into this sub-X sheet, and we can see that this one shot right here, which by the way, it looks really stupid because I got to go in preview mode to see what's really going on here. And so I'm going to explain in this live stream how this was achieved, because it's quite cool. There's a lot of, oops, I'm in the wrong shot here, sorry. There's a lot of cool things about it that make this process kind of interesting. So Ariel Ellison, born via, I assume is your native language, I'm sorry, would that be like Italian or Spanish? Forgive my stupidity, I'm not sure about that. So I'm gonna loop this right here. I actually need to start here. So now that the preview is turned on, I can hit the loop key, and then you can see there's a lot going on here. We've got camera shake, which honestly I'm not sure really belongs in there. I actually wanted to just see if I could do it, how to create camera shake in a way that would be repeatable. So you can see when the shot runs, we've got not only the basic animation, but we've also got this shading, highlights, a shadow against him on the wall, camera shake, and actually some visual processing of the stone wall that he's climbing. So there's a lot going on in this shot. If we turn this off, if we turn the preview off, this is what you see when you're not in preview mode. So now again, I'm going to go down into, hey Oscar, how you doing, man? I was using Flash. I would always be thinking about, if I have a looped animation or something, I would always sort of close that into I forget what you call it, a symbol. You close it into a symbol. I actually have it right. This is pretty sad, but the version of Flash that I have is version 5. And yeah, so you're always taking stuff that's complicated and making it into a symbol so that it's easier to manage. So that's the same thing you're doing with sub-X sheets. Okay, so I'm gonna show you actually a bunch of stuff here that I think is kind of cool and useful. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn these levels off. This is what I was dealing with initially. Okay, so let's go ahead and set a start marker, set a stop marker, because I have to reset it, because if I go up out of this sub-X sheet, you'll see that the actual start and end markers are in the 300s, and this is really the only downside to using sub-X sheets. If you resequence the frames, and then and the reason you would do that is so that in the sub-X sheet you can start on frame 1. It just makes things, yeah, movie clips, right? I've got a little bit of a delay here, Oscar, as far as my responses, so sorry about that. So what happens is you say, well, I want everything to start at frame 1 because it just makes it simpler, and then you go up out of the sub-X sheet, and what happens is OPENTOONZ puts like these dead frames all the way up to frame 1, and you got to hit resequence and then grab the whole thing like this and then drag it back down to where it was initially. So there's a couple steps there. The last one I used was CS. You know, honestly, I never got into Flash CS, and I think that Adobe Animate is probably a very capable program that I would probably do fine with. To be perfectly honest, I was interested in seeing what we could do with open source tools. It's not like they're expensive. I mean, come on. I mean, I use Sony Vegas, and that's about a $500 or $600 program. So it wasn't all about spending money or saving money, and the right tool is well worth the cost. I've said before that I wouldn't think twice about spending $1,000 on TV paint, for example, if it really was a big win. Okay, so I mean, in my case, just to be perfectly honest with you, I have a crack of TV paint because, you know, try before you buy. I don't use it. I've poked at it and played with it, and I've kind of thought, you know, if it works for me, then I'll buy it. No problem. It's well worth it. But what I've seen and fiddling around with it, it's just not that big of a win. So anyway, back to this. So I started with, I just reset my start and stop frames, and if I hit L, this is, okay, hold on a second here. This isn't really fair to show this way because it is a little misleading. So I'm going to go to the schematic, and I'm going to change something here. You notice how all these levels seem to be in sequence? Okay. Well, that's not how it started out. It started out like this. Okay, which would lead you to see this. Okay, so that was what Toon Boom. Yeah, and I don't like Toon Boom at all. I've used it, and in my opinion, it's I've got a copy of Toon Boom as well. I don't use it. I didn't get very far with it before I thought. Honestly, with software, part of it is, does it think the way you do? You know, it's different types of software resonate with different people. And I did not like Toon Boom at all. So anyway, that's that. Okay, so here's what's going on. We've got these. So this will hopefully be useful if you're seriously thinking maybe OPENTOONZ might be part of your workflow. Okay, so the first thing I did obviously was color it. I want to say that one of the lessons learned in this process was with animation, there's always the temptation to hurry up and get past a certain step to get to the next step. And if you chimp a step, you're always going to regret it, and it's always going to cost you later. You're always going to have to go back and fix it unless your standards are very low. And frankly, I've been guilty of that, where, you know, I'm in such a hurry that I've settled for less than stellar quality in my work. I don't really want to be that guy anymore, you know. So as I looked at this, I noticed, and I actually still notice, that there's a little bit of chatter here. Okay? You see this, and I'll just jump between the keyframes. Okay, you see that? Okay, that is actually not acceptable. That's crappy work right there. Okay, so I'm not even going to get to the schematic. First, let's fix the obvious problems so that we're not doing crappy work. Alright, so there's three things I can see. Up here, right here, and right here. The best thing to do for those would be to just fill these. This one's okay because he turns his head, and ostensibly his clothes could, you know, his clothing could make that little adjustment there, so no problem. What I'm going to do is go into the palette and just hit the plus key so that I can, and I'm going to close the schematic for the moment so I can see what I'm doing here. Because right here I've got a bunch of colors that are actually labeled for these ninja guys. Alright, so let's go to the top, and we will first, I'm going to hit the erase tool. And what am I going to erase? I'm going to erase lines. I actually don't want to accidentally erase my paint, so I'm going to just go ahead and erase lines only. So what that means is if I erase in an area like this, it will not erase. It's only going to erase the lines, not the fills. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and fix this. So anyway, what I was saying is if you chimp a step, then invariably what's going to happen is you're going to come back later and go, oh geez, you know, I really should have been more careful. Now there's still going to be a little bit of chatter because of the just from changing the frames. You can see that it's obviously pretty bad. if you really want to be meticulous about it, honestly, the easiest fix, this is this is going to probably look kind of crazy, but I'm going to say if I really want to fix this, this is how I would really do it. Just because part of it's saving time and just trying to adhere to a fixed level of quality through the whole thing. Okay, by just doing that and just putting it on a different level, look what I just did. It just cleaned the whole thing up. Now, there's more to clean up. Let's do this. Let's go, let's hit the R key and sample that color. So now we're using the same brush, but we're just amending the color. Alright, and now I can go in here, and I'm going to actually do the same thing here. I'm just going to patch this. So, and this is a cool thing with OPENTOONZ, is you can do this. You can just add a level and patch it up, and there we go. But yeah, like I said, with this project, I tell you, I'm really determined to not have a bunch of garbage sneaking through. Okay, so now what I want to do, I actually almost want to change my preferences so that it doesn't auto create frames, because my suspicion is that this shot is going to repeat over the whole sequence, actually. So I was going to talk more about the power of the schematic view and some of the things you can do with that, but I really want to address this first. It's just stupid to have, you just don't want to have this. See that garbage sneaking through right here? That's just not acceptable, you know. And it's easy to fix, so, you know, let's fix it. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to take some black in this. I'm just putting this all on a separate level. Okay, so it's covering it up, in other words. Okay, that looks great. That looks great. That totally fixed that. This is not perfectly fixed, but I'm actually going to just color a little black there because I know it's going to need, I don't want the main outline color. I want that color. Okay. And I didn't realize it, but I'm actually coloring in the ninja's level instead of the patch. But that's cool. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I don't care so much about the fourth frame, but I want to I just want to color this in. Just make it so that the flaws disappear. Not quite there. Not quite there. Let's just go ahead and make this a little... darn it. Okay, stop. I'm going to hit undo. I got to make sure I'm in the right column, or otherwise I'm not in the patch. I'm in the original animation. And frankly, in this particular case, fixing it this way is quite a lot easier. Okay, we're close. We're very close to having it very nicely patched up. Okay, except the only thing I have a problem with is right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of assume I've got this right by scribbling that in. And close. Okay, by the way, I wouldn't have to keep switching columns if I didn't have this preference set. If you go into your preferences, the way I have it set, and I kind of have to find this, but I think it might be under drawing. Yeah, use X sheet as animation sheet. Auto creation, if I disable it, I almost want to put a hotkey for that because I'm seeing where this could. Now, if I go here and patch it up, make tweaks to the patch, I can keep adjusting, and it's actually changing this first frame. So, like I said, that almost deserves a hotkey, so that you can instantly switch it off and on. Because usually, basically, if you're drawing, you really want auto creation on so you can quickly create keyframes. But when you're doing cleanup work like this, I don't know, it's kind of like you kind of want it turned off. Okay, so now we've got that fixed up. And there's other minor things we could look at, but I do want to keep this moving forward for you guys. Okay, so the next thing I had to address here was shadows. Okay, so what I did was I just added a, and this, I'm going to call this patch. We'll call this the patch layer. Okay, so what I want to do is add shadows, and so that's what we have here. And I knew that there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 keyframes. So this entire shot is only 4 keyframes, and most of it remains static other than his head. So there's no huge reason to make this more complicated than it needs to be. In fact, the truth is I almost should have done the shadow and highlights on a separate layer entirely. I mean 2 separate layers instead of 1, because then I could have created one for everything except his head. And the more I'm working with OPENTOONZ, I'm finding myself saying, hey, especially when if you're going to be in a sub X sheet, in other words, if I come up out of this and look at the accumulated effect, which you'd only appreciate if it's in render mode, you realize, hey, anything I do in this sub X sheet propagates out, to that one column. So if you want to add a few extra layers for patches and fixes, no big deal. Do it. It's well worth it. Okay, so in this case, what I did was, you'll notice in this setting right here, I put the opacity way down. So the opacity is at, tighten it up. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo. Oh, I guess I did a bunch of strokes, so I hope I don't run out of undo here. Okay. Now, what was kind of cool about it is I can do both highlight and shadows in the same layer because the opacity is set down to 20%. And I will certainly agree with you if you're thinking, yeah, but if it was full opacity, it looks pretty stupid. Well, that's okay. We're just going to turn it down. Now, the problem is, what about when you render? Well, when you render, OPENTOONZ, it looks okay now. It looks about the same. But in preview mode or render, OPENTOONZ does not respect this setting where you set the opacity of the level. It's a very useful setting because, like, for example, you might have a sketch and now you're going to put a firmer drawing or ink over top of it and use it as a guide. That's where having a semi-transparent layer is very useful. But if you want it to render that way, you got to use a little different technique. So that's where you go into your schematic view and you click this little button right here and switch it to the effects schematic. And then what I did was I used this plugin, which is over IN01. And by the way, I'm going to turn that on to preview mode. I make sure I got the right one here. Yeah, okay. So I just in the effects schematic, I just added this effect that allows me to just composite the shadow and highlight layer over top of the main layer and set the opacity of it. The other thing that's super cool about this plugin is this little deal right here, clipping mask. When I hit clipping mask, what that means, basically, I'll actually show you right here. What it means is my character is acting as a clipping mask. So now if I go through and I accidentally go like way outside the lines, when it renders you can't see that mistake because this drawing is acting as a clipping mask for this shadow and highlight layer. Okay, so the clipping mask toggle I find to be quite useful. So, and that's how I do it in Krita. I've had other videos where I've shown how I do shadows and stuff in Krita, and you know, the bad news for Krita is that everything I do over there, I'm finding more and more I can do just as readily in OPENTOONZ. and kind of save myself a step. Now, the one thing that you can't do in OpenTOONZ that Create is really good for is if you want to create a front-on view of a character, it's nice to be able to have a mirrored drawing, you know, so anything you draw on the left automatically draws on the right for you. Okay, so that's the highlights and shadows, and essentially this layer here is the same thing. It's pretty much done the same way. I just drew a bunch of I just basically you can see what I drew. I can turn off the highlights, but that's the shadow layer, if you can believe that, how stupid it looks. But when you, again, let's go back into the schematic, you can, the cool thing is it's really fast. And then let's go to effects, and then just by adding a I think I added a just turn down the transparency of it, or the opacity, I should say, made it transparent. Okay, so that's that. Then we got the wall underneath him, and if we click on this little camera, it clips the viewport to the actual camera view, which makes a little more sense. Okay, so I did add a posterized filter to the wall, so when it renders, by the way, the reason the shadow wasn't disappearing a minute ago every time I turned the effect off was because I was not in preview mode, so that was just a dumb mistake. Okay, so now how do you do the camera shake and transfer that camera shake to my character? Here's how. Go to the schematic view, and we are in effects mode, so we want to, oh sorry, you want to switch into the stage schematic, and we had the wall, which is this layer I'm turning off and on, and I wanted to add some camera shake. I did not want to bake the camera shake into the wall, however. So what I did was I simply created another raster level that has, there's no drawing in it. I literally just created a level but didn't draw anything. Okay, and then I called that shake. Then I come into the schematic view, and instead of the wall connecting directly to the table or the output, depending on how you want to say it, it connects to the shake layer. So the camera shake of the wall is then transferred, or the camera shake is transferred to the wall. Okay. So, oh, okay. Just talking to my son there. Okay, so the other thing was I wanted a slow camera move, like a push in, and I did that with a simple animation of yet another completely blank raster level. So you got a raster level that has a slight scaling up of the layer, and then you got the camera shake, then you got the wall. Well, the only problem is that my main character really is kind of married to the wall, so this is what should really be going on. Oh, except maybe not. Maybe not, because that creates a translation of my guy that I don't want to apply to the let me think here. I gotta think about how the schematic's going. Make sure I'm seeing, yeah, I'm seeing the camera move. Okay, so this is actually kind of interesting. So we don't want him to inherit any other translate. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay, this is very interesting. This is why I said the schematic's fairly intuitive for me. The problem is that this graphic of the wall was scaled. I mean, the size is completely different than my frame. So I have a scaling on the wall, and I want my character to inherit the camera shake, but not the scaling of the wall. So in other words, if I plug him in here, all of a sudden he's scaled up. Well, we don't want that. What we want is we want him to connect here. Now he is not sized along with the wall, but he is inheriting the camera shake and the camera move. Right? So now when we roll it, we see him shaking as well. And I mean, to me, it's like, that is so simple to... obviously, it took me a minute to figure out what the flow is, but to be able to transfer that camera shake to him is super cool, because then if we decide later, well, okay, the camera's moving too fast, for example, or there's something we don't like about it, then all we have to do is modify this column, all these keyframes, maybe by just deleting a couple, and then that correction will just propagate downstream to him as well. So, and that's basically why I tend to like node-based compositing as opposed to layer-based compositing. Layer-based compositing, like you get in Photoshop or whatever, or After Effects, unless you create groups, you know. Yep, when it renders, it basically adds the posterize effect, and I'm going to hop back up out of this sub-X sheet, and now we're moving on. So, okay, so what are we going to do with this guy? Well, first of all, at this point, this is not a sub-X sheet, but I'm not at all sure that it's going to need to be. So for that reason, I'm just going to deal with painting it right now. Okay, so the ninja costume, let's do a fill, normal mode. Actually, stop. That's probably going to have to be... This is probably going to require an animation loop. How long does this last? 365 to 385. So 20 frames. So it lasts more than... Well, it lasts about a second. So really, there should be some animation on that. So there's no point coloring them in, actually. No point. So I'm going to go ahead and let's get this roughed in. And I can already see another problem. But that's what I was kind of saying earlier about not chimping a step is, I mean, believe me folks, I'm as guilty as can be at, you know, you get eager to get a finished result, and you actually pretty much guarantee a worse result. Now, one thing that's a little concerning here is I changed the color of my outlines, and I didn't mean to do that. So now let's fix this, fix this, fix this, just using the fill tool in freehand mode, which lets you draw a lasso around the elements that you want to paint in. So this shouldn't take too long, and this shot literally only has one keyframe. I mean, there's just one drawing comprises the whole shot, which kind of also speaks to the reason why you might want to add like some camera shake or whatever. Okay, so now this is kind of interesting. Let's call this color stone. We'll call it stone 1. And I'm going to just go back into normal mode and paint that. And I'm going to call this stone 2 and paint that. Okay, and to be somewhat meticulous, I want to do that. And the problem we have on this particular drawing is that there's something missing with his hands. Alright, so I'm going to go into the B key and put these lines in here because he's actually got, they're basically like cut off gloves is what they are really. Okay. Fine. Ninja Flesh. Fill. Let's see how this goes. Oh, we're in freehand mode. I'm going back to normal too. That's interesting. It's actually quite it's illuminating to do your fills in normal mode because you realize how dirty your drawings actually are. It definitely reveals that in a hurry. In other words, all the flaws become really apparent. I'm going to hit the eraser here and just... shoot. I got to turn up the quote-unquote hardness of the eraser so it crawls right up to that edge. Bam. Okay, and then I want to be in lines mode so that I can actually erase those flaws in the lines without screwing up my color. Fill mode, freehand, there we go. That actually looks pretty good. Ninja costume. Eraser. Yeah, it's humbling because the more of this I do, the more I realize how... Oops. You know, how sloppy I've been. And it's just not acceptable. So, alright, Ninja hair. I guess technically his eyebrows should be the same color as his hair. And his eyes, I don't even have a clue. I made the other, whoops. I don't like the way it does that. I made the other ninja's eyes a little bit red-ish. You can see that there. Not a huge deal because, let's call this Ninja 2 Eyes. Because I can always change the color after the fact, obviously. Like that, see? So, no big deal there. Let's zoom out. Yeah, it definitely makes you think, geez, maybe I should be doing my ink with tighter like ink lines as opposed to this sketchy pencil-y kind of look, which I like a lot, but you do have to fight it a bit more in post in order to make it look okay. Looks like there's no comments. So I mentioned earlier, if you're if anyone else is watching and cares to, feel free to share what you're interested in, you know, while you're here, kind of thing. Okay, I like that. Erase this, and we're going to turn this into a sub X sheet and then add an extra layer of to animate the tassel. Gonna have to. I wonder if I can assign a hotkey to the brush width, which I assume would affect either a brush or an eraser, depending on what you're using. That would actually be quite useful. I was just saying good morning to my sweetie. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I think what I want to do actually is go into fill mode, and yeah, there we go. Okay. So now we're going to take this layer. I'm going to hit Control Shift down arrow, which for me didn't work. Maybe I need to be connected here. Control Shift down arrow. Yes. I want to include relevant peg bars. Okay, and you can see what happened when I made it into a sub X sheet. It went ahead and did what you see here. Oh, darn it. I wonder if I can hit shift. Yes! Oh, good. That's useful. Ha! Okay. So now I can go down here to where it begins. Just select that and delete those. So now it should play back properly. Okay. So now by turning that into a sub X sheet, I'm not going to do what I've been doing most of the time, just because I'm not too worried about saving the time. What I have been doing is taking this, go down into the sub X sheet, and then move all the frames up to frame 1. In this case, I'm going to, because I'm kind of learning, maybe that's an extra step for no good reason, because my starting and end points in my main X sheet, you know, they transfer to the sub X sheet, so why do I care about moving it up to frame 1 and resequencing it? It's kind of unnecessary. Okay. Now we see that we completely forgot to paint this. How embarrassing. So let's go to Ninja Flesh. What's going on here? That was weird. Tried to paint it and but I was using the mouse and like nothing happened. That was definitely weird. Okay. Okay, where are we at? Now, this is where it should get interesting. Let's make it interesting. I'm just going to touch the screen with I'm going to hit the B key and touch the screen. Touch the screen. Okay, maybe I'm not going to hit the B key and touch the screen. Oh, that's right. Remember? Preferences. Auto creation is disabled. I am using the X sheet as an animation sheet. Okay, gosh, what would be a good hotkey for that? I don't even know if it can be made into a hotkey. Let me see. Let's go to configure shortcuts, and I'm going to type in auto creation. Yeah, it doesn't have any options for that. So, oh well, I have to do it. So when I want to turn auto creation off and on, see what happens right now when I just kiss the screen? Boom. Ah, it automatically created a frame and a level that is a raster. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? This is actually going to be kind of fun. I'm going to grab this paintbrush, which is kind of a, it's actually a pretty nice interactive paintbrush kind of thing. And I'm going to go ahead and add some detail now to this frame. Just because I can. You know, we're just going to add some detail. Because remember, where these guys are at, the moon is shining. Hello, the moon is shining in like this from behind these guys. So I'm gonna actually. What I was gonna do is paint this and make it a little more transparent after painting it, but what's the point? I mean, it makes more sense to just paint this and let's just get the colors right here and now, you know. Alright, so now I'm going to go a little darker. This brush it's a little weird. It's supposed to be some sort of like oil paint type brush. It really needs to be darker. So I'm just going to add those details. For this particular shot, effectively the frame itself becomes the background painting. Now, I'm not going to do anything other than this stonework, so there will still have to be a like the ground, because you'll see the ground down here below him and stuff, and I'm not going to put that in this. Alright, there's that. And I'm going to hit the R key and just essentially Actually, I need to make it slightly lighter. Essentially add some noisy activity here that gives it a little bit of texture, but not too much, because of course our ninja, he would be creating a shadow situation right here. Okay, and I really need to be careful about these areas here, because since there is going to be a background, it's okay if I bleed between the wall and the ninja's costume, because they both would be shadowed, you know? I mean, in point of fact, this would make perfect sense. So if we want to use this sort of corrective layer, if you will, to tighten that up, no problem. Okay, that I don't like, because the moonlight would actually be coming down on his fingertips. So what I need to do is make my brush smaller. Alright, let's get kind of a little bit of an effect here, slightly there. So we want something along those lines. And because it's nighttime, that light effect would be fairly harsh. Oops, that's too much. Okay, and then highlights. I'm going to come back here, and again, I think I want to make my brush even smaller. And traditionally I'm definitely a fix it and post kind of guy, and probably more than I should be. And the more I'm working with this animation in OPENTOONZ, the more I'm finding I want to get it looking right at the earliest possible step, if that makes sense. So like in this case, I don't want to have to do too much in post with effects in order to make it look sharp and complete. I want the art itself to be as close to acceptable as possible. So boom, boom, boom. That looks pretty good. Probably could lighten it yet another step, because this moonlight's gonna be coming in pretty harshly, actually. So I may not be taking this as far as I should. Let's see what it looks like if we kind of go, add kind of a crisp highlight here. I like that, actually. You just got to be thinking about the direction of the moonlight. And oh well, I can't do that. I got to go R. You got to start out with the correct base color, obviously. And then I'm going to say we want to move that out just a little bit and hit the B key. Will he have like a glow behind him or something like that? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Okay, that looks actually pretty good. Let's hit the N key so we're at actual pixel size. And I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick render to see what this looks like on a large, I'm pretty happy with that painting, to tell you the truth. I'm surprised how well it turned out with the rocks. There's a little bit here I could see. There's a little bit here that is worth criticizing. And by the way, here's another nice thing about OPENTOONZ, is I can be working very interactively in this window that's not in preview mode, and on another screen I can have a full HD, fully rendered version of it. And basically what happens is when my pen stops moving, the fully rendered one updates. And so you sort of get the best of both worlds as far as being able to sort of see what you're doing and what it's going to look like when it's done. So, yeah, like I said, the painting, I'm feeling like maybe my brush is getting too small. In other words, I'm operating at a level of detail that exceeds what the anime aesthetic would really be asking for. And so I'm going to pull back a little bit, make my brush a little bigger, a little coarser, if you will. And but yeah, I have to say I'm definitely really liking the way that shot looks. Okay, and this move here is just to sort of soften the edge of that a little bit. Okay. Alright, and now obviously because of that problem, we need to extend this all the way down here. And you know what? If the camera shake I was talking about earlier, if that actually made sense, which at this point I'm not sure that it does make sense. But I could always just copy and paste that level from the other sub-X sheet into this one and then attach it with the schematic view and actually have the exact same camera movement. I'm trying to do two things at once, which, as you guys know, is sort of a non-starter for me. What I need right now, I'm going to pull up FS Viewer Portable. FS Viewer Portables, you can, just look for it. It's the Fast Stone Image Viewer, but it basically lets you see thumbnails and do a quick zoom in of the images on your system. So for browsing around and, finding images and stuff, it's quite useful. So what I want to do is I really want to see grass, and all these pictures are just images we found online. Some of them would be, what you might call public domain or whatever, and I'm sure a lot of them aren't. So we got to be careful what we use and how we use it. That's for sure. But the question becomes, what does the ground look like? Now the fact of the matter is that the ground where this guy's going to be is kind of rocky but with some vegetation. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image and I'm going to drag it right here. I'm going to do a load because we're always referencing the same folders on the system. So I could even be working on my laptop and we would be able to open the project and have everything open properly. I hope that made sense. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale this way, way up. And I'm going to move the position because what I'm looking for... Okay, yeah, we definitely can't have it flipped. I know you're probably thinking, yeah, Dave, how could you be so dumb? Well, sometimes I just try things to see if they'll work, and then they don't work. And that's okay. Alright, position... I've still got 2 watching, so... What I need to do here is move this over to here. That looks surprisingly good, I must say. That's funny. I didn't quite expect that. I was thinking I'd have to scale it up quite a lot more. Okay, what I was thinking I was going to be doing is something of this nature. And I think that what I'll do, this is actually a great example of, what are you going to do? I'm going to paint over this. So I'm going to take this column, hit the B key, drag this back here, and I am going to paint over it. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to hit the C key and then the V key. And I'm going to call this veg for vegetation. And I'm going to go to my paintbrushes. And basically, I'm going to look for some particle effects. Okay, so I have no idea if this is what I'm looking for. Not bad, not bad. That's probably better. Yes, those 3 effects are quite nice. So I'm going to bring this up to 0. 0 is like the default. Okay, and now that I have that brush, I can go ahead and I'm going to double click this again. Oops. Alright, just so I have quick access. Whoopsie poo. I gotta have quick access to the colors. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the R key so I get that, and then I'm gonna go ahead and paint in my own vegetation. So I'm not gonna count on this, you know, ostensibly copywritten image to be my source of background. I'm just gonna use it as a reference and just paint over it. So that's cool. I'm actually pretty happy with how that turned out. You need to lower the opacity of the background image to render the trees if that's what you're doing. I don't know when you put that comment, but I think it was a fairly short time ago. What I'm seeing is that the background image actually, at least compared to the guy in the foreground, the background image simply has too little contrast. So that's why I'm a little confused, because what you're saying almost sounds like the opposite of what I would think I would want to do here. So feel free to clarify, Oscar. I appreciate your comment. So all I'm doing right here is just painting over it, putting in my own vegetation. I'm going to actually make this super huge and see how it looks. Yeah, that's cool. I thought you were redrawing it. Yeah, well that's what I'm doing. I'm just drawing over top of it, because this down here needs to really be the ground. Right about here is where the explosion, or not explosion, but when the piece falls and goes poof, that's roughly where that's going to happen. So yeah, I'm just let's see what happens if we take this all the way down. Yeah, see, we can get that nice contrast when we're ready for it. And I'm actually going to add another cluster of trees right there. This is the one thing that OPENTOONZ is not super great at. Would be more advanced painting functions, like, you know, maybe cloning, that sort of thing. But I gotta say that in terms of sizing, that's why I said lower the opacity so you can. Oh, I see. Yeah, well, actually, what I'm doing is I'm literally just gonna paint over it. I'm just gonna paint over it, and then I actually could also add an intermediate layer that's just maybe like a really dark hunter green type color to serve as a basis for the, you know, sort of the local color. So there's my original painting, and then here's what I'm painting over it. And again, you know, just sort of making this up as I go along, of course. Yeah, okay. So where'd my what's going on here? Am I in the wrong column? I'm actually starting to think maybe I am. I am. No, I'm not. I'm in the right column. Okay, there we go. Alright, so I'm going to kind of move fast here, hitting the R key and just trying to really be random about it. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the sort of the sense of these buildings in here. But thank you for the comments, Oscar. Whenever you post something, I'm always, you know, thinking about it. I never underestimate my own potential to make dumb mistakes. So yeah, it's really cool to be able to just hit the R key to sample a color off this background image and then immediately begin painting over top of it. And in this case, you can almost just go for total randomness, you know. Just a little bit of color there, a little more saturation, if you will. Okay, the only thing I really don't like about it is the tops of this tree line. I'm just not getting enough contrast, so I'm going to lower the size of my brush. Yes, that's better. And just come right in there with some highlights so that we get a sense of the actual tree line a little better. Well, it's improving. I mean, when it comes to don't we all need next pair of eyes? Yeah, exactly. Isn't that the truth? It does help. You know, it always helps. So I will say that this part of the entire process of working on this anime, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's grunt work. It's definitely a great opportunity to make dumb mistakes, but you know, it's fun seeing it sort of come together. Every once in a while, this seems to be happening where it seems like yes, that's right, right there. That's the reason I lost my brush, is because I'm actually painting into the wrong layer, or level as in OPENTOONZ parlance. One thing that really helps with stuff like this is to squint. If you squint, you can see you can't see as much detail, and you get a better feeling for the overall. What's going on here? Something weird's happening. Hang on. It's like I grabbed the wrong brush. Okay, yeah, there's some very strange things happening right now. So I'm going to save all. Somehow I got back into this layer. And that's the brush I want. So I want that brush and that layer. And it appears, so I'm going to go with a, okay, it does appear to be working. But why is it cutting it off right there? See that? What the heck is that? That's kind of new. I really actually have hit something that's a little mysterious here. So when I hit my brush, B key, the size is way too small, but okay, now it's painting over it again. Yeah, so there's OPENTOONZ for you. It's like it works, and then it doesn't work, and then it works, and it doesn't work. It can be a little bit vexing. Okay, but that's cool. Let's get this kind of dark. Like the scale of the brush right now is probably about right. We were thinking, yeah, right. That's what I thought. You know, is it masked? It's like, what the heck's going on here? You know. But like I said, that's OPENTOONZ. Is you got to be a little vigilant about what level you're painting into and this sort of thing. Like right there, you got the same thing. I'm painting over this. I'm gonna kill every level except that one. So all we have is this level. And now that problem is gone. Okay, that is something that happened in the highlight layer. So I'm going to just hit the E key and erase it. I understand completely what you're saying, and I tend to agree. I actually think the background maybe is too light. You know, if it was darker, that would make him pop against it more. So the risk you run, let's see here. When I squint, the edges of the rocks and the tips of the hair stand out. Right, yeah, so there's some real contrast issues here. We could actually go in and change the palette entry for his hair, and I may well do that. But the thing is, there's a lot that could still be happening with this shot. There could be a glow behind him. I mean, there's a lot of post-production, so I can't really make intelligent choices about the overall, what's the word? Not the composition. The composition is sort of how it's laid out, but the lighting and contrast and all that will definitely come back into consideration long after I finish this background painting. So there's quite a bit to do. And it's like I said earlier, I'm kind of a fix it and post kind of guy, and while I am trying to get away from that, there are certain things that if I make a decision now and fix this or that, without a doubt, tomorrow I'm going to have to go back and change it again. So you sort of do learn what to focus your attention on. The most important thing, like right now, what I want to do is get the contrast in this sort of ground vegetation thing that I've got going on. Now I'm going back in here with some gray because the truth is this area right here is supposed to be more like dirt. I'm going to give it a little bit of a brownish tint. Yeah, it's supposed to be more like a clay dirt kind of thing going on. Do you have an animatic for this that has the color? No, not at all. All I have is what I did in Blender, which was the line drawing. So I'm literally making this up as I go as far as the background and stuff. And also, I'm using this process to sort of get familiar with or you might say comfortable with the My Paint brushes in OPENTOONZ. So this particular particle brush I haven't really used before, but I'm liking the result that it's given me. So I'm just saying, okay, well let's do some painting now with this brush and see what comes out of it, kind of thing. So I'm not a background painting guru by any stretch of the imagination. You may have to paint that in Krita or GIMP for better control. Yeah, well the thing is, I don't think the problem here has anything to do with the brushes. The problem is just me knowing what I'm doing, really. So now again, I'm squinting to see if I can get some contrast down underneath this vegetation. That's looking better. Being that I use Krita and GIMP a lot, both of them, I would say I'm not seeing anything in the process I'm doing right now that would, where it would be better or easier in one of those than it would be here. It feels like the level of contrast that I want to let the floor down here below him be a little darker in this area, because it creates a bit of a shape around him so that he can, like you said, pop out more. And that's just a compositional trick that artists use all the time. And so see, like that, by letting this area fall more into shadow, it's going to make it pop more. I'm like, right now I'm totally squinting and just squinting and sketching just so I can see if I can see him the way I want to. And now I can add a little bit more custom brushes in the open area to just draw and paint with olive cloud. Yeah, yeah. And I think you can do that here actually. I think it's Alt F. Yeah, in Alt F, and then there you go. The problem is I would still need the I'd still need to see my palette and stuff. So there's probably a way to have the palette open. But now at this scale, I really like this, because at this scale I can really get in here, and to me that's looking really good. Now it's actually starting to look like vegetation where the moonlight would be coming down and illuminating it a little bit, and so you're going to have some fairly harsh shadows. I like the way the noise that's baked into this My paintbrush creates natural variations, almost like a combination of vegetation, frankly, from a distance, or film grain. It has a real natural look to it, so definitely cool. The temptation is to do too much to where it starts to become like symmetrical and whatnot. But believe me, I'm not discounting what you're saying, Oscar. I'm more like I'm in the process of doing it this way right now. It could well be that later I'll go, I'm going to repaint that shot in Krita or whatever. It could definitely happen. I just kind of wanted to see through this process in order to kind of feel what's working and what's not. And as I go further and further, I'm finding that it is working. I need to take that out of there. So, again, we're creating a little envelope for this guy, and it is becoming too symmetrical, unfortunately. That's better. And now I want to really get dark in this area so that it actually creates a little pocket. I need to actually go through and look at still frames from like some Disney movies or something and see how they really, they know what they're doing when it comes to like composition and using the lighting and shadow to sort of frame in your characters. I mean, look at that. That actually looks quite cool in my opinion. It's starting to very much look like a matte painting type of aesthetic. It's enough detail but not too much. Now over here is still kind of hurting a bit, but at the same time, this is going to be sort of clay. This is rocky ground going on. So, and I'm going to actually steal a little bit of gray from the rock. So this is another compositional tool that people better than me probably use a lot, which is to say, let's take a color from this side of the picture and let's what's the word? Let's reprise that color over in this corner of the composition, so it sort of folds him in, right? That's definitely a useful technique. Now the truth of the matter is, in this particular case, if we're going to leave this building in here, which I kind of think we should, is that this would be more in shadow than it is. So I'm going to go ahead and darken it all a bit. I'm going to leave it just enough to see those windows so that I can go in, and if they're a little sketchy, that's perfectly fine. I mean, this is a background image, and then what we're going to do here is just bring this up a little bit, add some noise there, and then what we want to do is kind of have a little bit of a zone where we see a shadow from the other building. So this building is going to be casting a shadow, and I don't want to delineate the edge of the building or make you can save that image, clone it, and flip it to the right side. Yeah, and actually, now that you mention it, let me see, file. Again, I just want to save frequently here. Okay, so I thought I had the H key. You know what it is? In my finish painting means to blend that, offset the copy. Right. Yep. I was going to flip the canvas, but I think, as stupid as it sounds, the version of OPENTOONZ that I'm using right here, on my laptop, if I hit the H key, it flips it horizontally. I think even though I took the exact installation of OPENTOONZ from the laptop, portable OPENTOONZ, copied it to this machine, I run it, and a lot of preferences and whatnot are lost, unfortunately. So that means I'm not even 100% sure the capability to flip the canvas is in here. Let me see. What would it be? Edit. It's view. Let's go to configure shortcuts. Whoops. Let's go to, yeah, configure shortcuts. Can't find any matching command. Okay. I don't get that. This is not okay, sorry about this, but other time I have ever opened configure shortcuts, this is not what I see. Couldn't find any. Like this whole area is different now. So I'm going to save all and close it. It's been running for a while, and sometimes OpenTOONZ gets stupid if you have it running for a while. But hopefully that's a fluke. We want this. And actually right here, well, before I go too much deeper, I'm going to go to configure shortcuts. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So I'm looking for flip. Yep, there it is. Flip viewer horizontally. H. It's currently assigned to brush size decrease. Decrease the minimum. I am going to change that for sure. Cool beans. So now we're a little closer to, whoops. So I guess this is where I want to be. So I'm going to go down into this sub-X sheet. Once again, clamp the camera view. And then go to my start point. And I want to be in the paint layer. Okay, so now this is good news. Okay, that's cool. One thing I did notice in the past, just so's you know, is that OpenTOONZ sometimes gets very touchy. Well, correct. Yeah, or in the I haven't even gotten into the examining the profile or opening up the registry or anything like that to try to solve some of those kinds of problems in OpenTOONZ. To me, it's a bit stupid, especially for a cross-platform application. If I'm going to be programming it, I'm going to use a simple text-based INI file that's in the application folder for all preferences. It's not like hard drive spaces at a premium nowadays. I mean, come on. So therefore, there's no reason you can't make an application portable very easily. But it's what you get. So what I'm seeing here when I flip the canvas, by the way, is that everything was sort of slanting a little bit in one direction. What I'm seeing now feels better. And frankly, I'm almost done, I would say. As I'm looking at the ground here, I'm going to sort of noise out that shadow again. What I was going to say is that OpenTOONZ often is more inclined to blow up when your canvas is flipped. Why, I have no idea, but it doesn't seem to be doing it now, so that's good news. What are we doing on time? An hour and a half. Okay, I'm going to come back here, and what I really want to do, let me look at this in. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in, you may find this interesting. I'm going to hit Alt-N, and I'm going to add a vector layer, or vector level. All right, and on this vector level, I am going to draw an ellipse. Okay. I don't know why that OpenTOONZ doesn't want to respect my my mouse today. It's like I'm drawing with my mouse and the mouse moves, but when I try to draw a shape, it doesn't work. Okay, so I'm going to color that. I'm going to fill it. And then I'm going to change the color to white. I'm going to hit the A key and kind of center that on his head. Crank it so it lines up with the wall. Okay, now I'm going to turn it off here. There's really no reason for that level to be turned on in the preview mode. Alright, and then I'm going to go into the schematic and I'm going to add a blur and a blend. So here we go. There's the X sheet. And what do we call this? We'll call this, let's call it glow, for lack of a better term. Okay, and there it is. And the main action it's really going to be over top of um, every other level. So I'm going to say that what we want is probably layer blending. And let's do a color. What is it that makes it brighter? I think a burn. Let's see. Oh, that doesn't work. It has to be... Well, let's do one thing at a time. First, let's get the blur right. Okay. Now that blur needs to be way bigger than that. So let's make it 30. Not horrible, not horrible. Let's make it 60. When in doubt, double it. Okay. That looks pretty good. But I don't like the blending mode. I want the layer blending to be light. I haven't spent any time with these effects, but I definitely need to because I'm sure they're quite useful. But layer blending, what I'm really looking for is like a screen effect. So add or screen would be fine. Yeah, wait. Did that work? No, but I need another source. Okay. But yet, what I really want to do is combine multiple sources. I'm not quite sure what the answer is there. So I'm going to call this Ninja 2, just so I can find it more easily on the schematic. So let's give this a crack and see what it's going to look like, and then we'll adjust from there. So if we go ahead and make that source 2, let's look at what happens. Yeah, that's not what I was after. So the good news and bad news with effects in OpenTOONZ is that till you know them well, the results are a little unpredictable. That's the bad news. The good news is, oh, look at this. You can have like multiple sources. Okay, let's do that then. Why is this layer completely gone or appears to be disconnected? Column 4. I got a little bit of a hiccup here in that my shadow layer, which is where I painted over my rocks and stuff. Let's call this rock paint, just so I can find it here. Okay. For some reason. Okay, I see what's going on. Okay, that's interesting. So it's kind of convenient that if you're in normal mode, you don't have the CPU burden of processing effects. And so, you know, in other words, you can, this is just getting in the way, right? This ellipse. So I can turn it off in the preview, but then it still gets processed. The short answer to what I was talking about is that I'm not at all certain how this processing is going to flow, but let's find out. Let's turn on the preview. And okay, that's not bad. So Ninja 2 and the rocks. Yeah, I mean, we don't need that glow to be undo. Okay, let's get it back to where it was. And now let's go to replace effects, image blending, and I believe what I did was screen. Let's do image blending IO and change the scale. I think that the whole effect is a little bit overdone. The problem that we have is I'd really like to be able to turn it down. I know what I can do. All I gotta do is change this color. There we go. If it's below 50% gray, it won't have any effect at all. If I turn it up a little bit, we get this glow happening. And then I can also tint it, which it would actually be tinted like this. It would be a bluish moonlight kind of color. So would it really be on his face like that? I don't think so. So again, you know, we're experimenting here. You know, this is not a definitively super great idea that I'm implementing. I'm just trying to see how things work. And I just want something that's going to have a bit of a blur to it. Actually, let's do it this way. Have a blur to it and create sort of a glowing effect. And actually, I'm going to try this as well. This should be interesting. I should be able to turn the alpha down. Yeah, great. So the only problem we have now, see, isn't that cool? Because we can just ease it in. Problem is now that we've done that, the all the paint work is gone. All right. So now it's time to get our paint work back. So schematic. Oh, there's the reason right there. Okay. So the rock paint, let's just put it into the X sheet. Maybe we need to have it over top. Yep. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to move the schematic out of the way because there's no reason from an instructive standpoint that it really needs to be there anymore. I'm going to go here and grab that color, and I'm actually going to crank the alpha back up and see if things work as expected. Now, other than the fact that the paint, what's a little strange here is, what if I put that under there? Okay, that would hide it. But this, I wonder why this effect is causing the paint work to disappear. The answer must be in the schematic, but I'm not quite seeing it. I think this might be a problem to solve another day. We don't, one of the things that's kind of disappointing to me is for the in-out effects, which means it requires 2 levels, you've got overlay mode. But for the regular layer blending, there is no overlay mode. Let's just see what color burn does. Not much. Let's see what color dodge does. Again, not much. Well, that's why, because I turned it off like an idiot. Okay. Let's see what color dodge does if we also add the rock paint into it. Okay. Now let's replace this. Let's go back to color burn and see what that does. Okay, yeah, so that's the darkening effect. I always get mixed up on burn and dodge, which is which. So lighten mode? Let's try that. No, that's too much sort of like pasted over. Layer blending. So screen? That's probably better. Let's do this. Okay. So then I guess the problem here would be that you're creating, oh, by the way, this should be killed. You're creating a screen effect with the paint itself, which is not quite what we really want. So I might have to solve this later. What I really want to do is use the in-out effect. In-out overlay. That's really what I want. But I don't really understand why it's causing the all the paint to completely disappear. And the only solution appears to be to move the paint above, in which case you probably would have to do this. You'd probably have to go, I'm just really spitballing here. I'm going to do another overlay and make this the background of that one and see what happens. Oh, that's completely not making any sense at all. Forget it. Okay. This is actually pretty much okay for what I'm wanting to work with in the scene. And this background image can be used later when we have the shot of the rock falling, the rock that breaks off of the surface of the wall. So now I'm going to do a little bit more paint adjustment here. Hitting the R key. Whoops. No, we do not want green. We want this brush and this color. I'm not sure I'm liking that. I'm going to keep hitting undo. I liked this. This little bit here I thought looked pretty good. But beyond that, it's just doing more harm than good. So, what time is it? Yeah, it's 12:12. I need to go work out anyway. So, I think with that, I'm going to call it a day. And let my son take over the computer. File, save all, and perhaps I will live stream again tomorrow. So see you guys later.